The most important rule in personal finance was written by a government committee for public housing in 1969. The 30% rent rule. You've heard it. You've probably used it. You may have been rejected by a landlord for violating it, and it has almost nothing to do with your financial health. Here's the question this covers. If the rule wasn't designed to protect you, who was it designed to protect? In 1969, the United States Congress passed the Brooke Amendment, named after Senator Edward Brooke of Massachusetts. The amendment established that public housing tenants could not be required to spend more than 25% of their income on rent. That number was later revised to 30% in 1981. Read that carefully. This was a cap on what the government could charge low-income public housing tenants. It was a consumer protection measure, a ceiling, not a target. A rule designed to ensure that the poorest Americans weren't spending more than a third of their limited income on federally subsidized housing. It was never designed for a 28-year-old software engineer in Austin trying to figure out if they can afford a one-bedroom apartment. Somewhere between 1969 and now, a government subsidy ceiling became a commercial market standard. And the people who benefit most from that transformation are not renters. Here's the mathematical problem at the center of this. The 30% rule is calculated on gross income, your salary before taxes, before health insurance, before the government takes its share. But your rent is paid with something entirely different. Net income, take-home pay, the actual dollars in your account. Take a $70,000 annual salary. Gross monthly income, $5,833. 30% of that is $1,750, the number the rule says you can afford in rent. But $70,000 gross in a state with income tax produces a take-home of roughly $4,200 per month after federal tax, state tax, and FICA contributions. 30% of your actual take-home is $1,260. The gap between what the rule says you can afford and what you can actually afford without financial stress, $490 every single month, nearly $6,000 per year. And that's before we talk about the costs the rule doesn't even account for. The gross income illusion isn't an accident, it's a feature. When a corporate landlord runs your rental application and requires your income to be 3 times the monthly rent, the standard qualification benchmark derived directly from the 30% rule, they are calculating against your gross salary. The number that sounds largest, the number that produces the highest rent they can legally justify charging you. They are not calculating against what you actually take home. In a high cost of living city with state income tax, the difference between your gross and net income can be 25 to 35%. That means a rule calculated on gross is already systematically overstating your affordability by roughly a third before you've paid a single bill. But here's where it compounds. Because the 30% rule assumes that the remaining 70% of your income is yours to do with as you please. It is not. Let's look at what the rule ignores, using a $70,000 salary in a high cost of living city. Rent at 30% of gross, $1,750. Federal and state tax approximately $1,400 per month. Health insurance $350. Car payment or transit costs $400. Student loan payment $350. Utilities $150. Phone $80. Renter's insurance $20. Basic subscriptions $80. Total fixed monthly costs $4,580. Actual monthly take home $4,200. Monthly deficit negative $380. Following the 30% rule on a $70,000 salary in a high cost of living city doesn't leave you with 70% of your income for everything else. it leaves you in the red. Not because you're bad with money, not because you're spending irresponsibly, because the rule was built on a cost structure that hasn't existed since the Carter administration. HUD data shows that median asking rents have significantly outpaced real wage growth since the early 2000s. The rule hasn't moved, the costs have. Every fixed cost the rule ignores is a dollar that cannot go towards savings, investment, or any asset that builds long-term wealth. This is not a budgeting problem. This is a systematic wealth extraction mechanism disguised as a financial guideline. Here's what the landlord side of this looks like. Large institutional property managers and real estate investment trusts, REITs, use the 3 times rent income qualification standard on virtually every application. That standard is the 30% rule in operational form. Why do they use it? Because it sets rent at the absolute maximum a tenant can qualify for on paper, while leaving them with just enough margin to avoid defaulting in a normal month. It is a precision instrument for maximizing extraction while minimizing vacancy. A tenant spending 30% of gross, which translates to 38 to 42% of their net take-home in a taxed environment, has almost no discretionary capital left after fixed costs. They cannot build an emergency fund at meaningful speed. They cannot invest consistently. They are, by design, one unexpected expense away from financial instability, which means they cannot afford to move, which means they renew the lease, which means the rent goes up. The rule that was supposed to protect public housing tenants from overpaying has become the operating manual for keeping private renters liquid enough to keep paying and broke enough to keep renting. Here is the framework that actually works in 2025. Forget gross income. Start with net take-home pay. Every dollar that hits your account after taxes, insurance, and mandatory deductions. That is your real budget. That is the only number that matters. From that number, add up every fixed, non-negotiable monthly cost: rent, utilities, insurance, debt payments, transportation, everything that leaves your account whether you want it to or not. That total should not exceed 60% of your net take-home. 60%, not of your gross salary, not of the number on your offer letter, of the money you actually receive. That 40% remainder is your real margin. It funds an emergency reserve. It gets invested. It is the difference between a renter building wealth and a renter funding someone else's. The 30% rule isn't a personal finance tool. It never was. It's a 1969 government subsidy cap that got laundered through 5 decades of real estate marketing into a cultural standard that benefits exactly one party in a rental transaction. Now you know which party that is. The question worth sitting with: if the rule for renting was engineered to extract maximum value from you, what other rules in personal finance were designed by the same people for the same reason? A full net fixed cost calculator is pinned in the comments. Enter your actual take-home, and it shows you the real rent ceiling for your situation, not the gross income version. The next video goes one layer deeper: how corporate REITs are using rent-to-income data at scale to set prices across entire zip codes, a practice that looks like market pricing and functions like a cartel. If that kind of analysis is useful to you, subscribing means you don't miss it.